Welcome to biology class students. I think last particular class where we have concentrated on different abiotic factors, how it differs from one habitat to that of the other habitat, and today I think continue to that the responses given for the changes in abiotic factors. That is what we are going to study today. That is response to the abiotic factors. As we all know, the abiotic factors will be of a temperature, a water, a sunlight. All these are some of the abiotic factors. And these abiotic factors will not be the same throughout. It has been fluctuating. It has been fluctuating. That is, it varies from one place to that of the another place. It varies from one place to that of the another place. But the living organisms which are living in this abiotic environment, the living organisms, either it might be of unicellular organisms or it might be multicellular organisms which are present in this environment should maintain a stable internal environment. Even so, there is a lot of fluctuations in the outer environment. The internal body should maintain the stable environment, and there are some conditions or there are some particular factors which are responsible for this, and that is what we are going to study in the chapter what called as a response to that of that is abiotic factor. And the term which is used, for this stable internal environment in an organism is what we call it as homeostasis. I think one more questions may be asked in your examination. Homeostasis is nothing but ability of an organisms to maintain a stable internal environment or a steady state in an ever-changing external environment. Homeostasis, it refers to ability of an organism to maintain a stable internal environment or a steady state in an ever changing external environment. In an ever-changing external environment is called as homeostasis. Once again I repeat, any of our organisms, they will maintain a constant or the stable internal environment to that of, or when it is being compared to that of the external environment, and that is what we call it as homeostasis. And this is done through structural, physiological as well as by behavioral mechanisms. It is being done through structural, behavioral as well as by what? Physiological mechanisms. Organism can maintain the stable internal environment either by their structural aspects or by their behavioral aspects or by their physiological aspects. I think if you look on to that of human beings, artificially they'll try to maintain this homeostatic condition. Naturally it is possible, even so they go for the artificial method of maintaining this homeostasis. I think if the persons who are working in a office or home or some other place, if a temperature is more, they go for the use of AC or the fan. In that way, the temperature gets reduced. Same manner, if at all, if the temperature is less, they go use of what? The heaters. They go use of the what? That is heaters in turn to raise the temperature. But our body has got a self-sustenance to the changes in the external environment. There is no need of using this artificial equipments. There is no need of using this artificial equipment to maintain stable internal environment. I think you all know that blood pH, it ranges from 7.35 to 7.45, and the body temperature, it is of 98.6 degree Fahrenheit, and also the blood pressure, it is of 120 to 80. This is what the stable internal environment, what you could see in our body. If it fluctuates, I think you could see the problems arises. Even so, if you could see lot of changes in the environment, our blood, the pH, it has been present in between 7.35 to 7.45, that is somehow basic, and the temperature of the body is being maintained of 98.6 degree Fahrenheit, and the blood pressure 120/8. Little fluctuations we could see, very closer to this. If at all, if it is more, I think finally it is being considered as what? Disease. The two main parameters, which helps in homeostasis. One is of thermoregulation and the another is of what? Osmoregulation. The two main parameters which helps in maintaining the homeostasis. One is of what? Thermoregulation. Another is of what? Osmoregulation. Thermoregulation is nothing but the maintenance of constant body temperature, and osmoregulation is nothing but the maintenance of osmotic concentration in our body. Well, if you look on to that of thermoregulation, you could see two major group of organisms could be identified based on the mechanism of thermoregulations. One is of what? Poikilothermic animals, or what we call it as the cold-blooded animals, and the other is of what? Homeothermic animals. That is what called as the warm-blooded animals. It doesn't mean the poikilothermic means the one they live in the colder areas. And the same manner, homeothermic means it doesn't mean the one they live in the warm areas. The one they live in warm areas. If you look on to that of poikilothermic, where you could see little fluctuations could be seen to that of environment. They are capable to tolerate for the little fluctuations, but whereas a homeothermic, they can tolerate and also they try to maintain a constant body temperature to that of external environment, and that is being called as homeothermic animals. I think we all know about the poikilothermic, that is the birds or some other things. Homeothermic, the mammals, some of the examples related to this. And osmoregulation means the maintenance of the osmotic concentrations in a body fluid, either by what we call it as a water exit, or by retaining the water is what we call it as osmoregulations. I think depending upon the external environment, finally our body fluid should contain a particular concentration of solutes with that of water. Either the solute increases, even if the water increases, there will be a problem. And so for the maintenance of the osmotic concentration, by a different mechanisms is what called as osmoregulations. So for these are the two main parameters which are responsible for the maintenance of what called as homeostasis. One is of what? Thermoregulation, maintenance of a particular body temperature, and the another is of osmoregulation. It is related to the maintenance of osmotic concentration. Next, I think we'll look on to different mechanisms or different factors which is responsible for the maintenance of what called as homeostasis. First, we will concentrate on regulators. These are the organisms which maintains a constant or which maintains the homeostasis either by physiological or behavioral mechanisms. Organisms which maintains homeostasis either by physiological or a behavioral process either by a physiological or by a behavioral process. We call that as what? Regulators. Whereas whatever the metabolic reactions which you could see in these organisms, there is a chance of a production of heat and also there is a chance of a loss of heat also. Here, this heat, whatever which has been produced or whatever which has been lost, it should be balanced. It should be a balance. That is, heat loss should always be equal to that of the heat gain. So for, if you take any of the metabolic reactions, I think you studied last year in the chapter of human physiology, whatever the metabolic reactions what you could see in our body, finally in some reactions you could see the gain of heat and in some reaction there is a loss of heat. So for this particular two processes should be in balance, such that whatever the heat lost should be equal to that of the heat gain. There are some particular glands or some particular secretory tissues which are responsible for this heat gain or what called as the heat loss. If you look on to that of the mammals or even the infants, that is newly born babies, well, there in these organisms, either in the mammals or in that of the infants there is a special tissue which is called as brown fat. There is a special tissue which is called as the brown fat. This brown fat produces the end product of heat instead of ATP. This brown fat, they produces a heat instead of what called as ATP, and so forth. This is one which helps in maintaining a constant heat. Not only that, I think if you look on to that of summer seasons, there the temperatures will be more. That is, the outside temperature will be more. So to maintain a homeostasis, a sweating takes place in our body. This sweating functions in removing the solute particles followed to that of water, and it also maintains the cold body. It maintains the coolness in our body. This is what you could see during summer season to maintain homeostasis. Whereas in winter, in a winter season, the shivering takes place. In the winter season, what happens? This shivering takes place, which involves the involuntary muscle contractions. The shivering functions in contraction of muscles, and they produces the heat. They produces what? Heat in that way where the person can maintain a constant body temperatures. And if you concentrate to that of birds as well as animals, to maintain a constant osmotic concentrations in the body, they produce the urine which is of hypertonic. Last year you learned hypertonic and hypotonic. Hypertonic means that the concentration of solutes will be more. So for the urine, what produced by the birds as well as some particular animals, it will be of hypertonic, and this hypertonic functions in excreting the solute and maintaining a constant osmotic concentration in the body. Even if you look on to that of a mammals, whatever the urine which is being produced in the mammals, it has the solute concentrations more, that is 25 times more than that of what? A body fluids. It has 25 times more than that of what? A body fluids. And even if you look on to that of reptiles, this reptiles, they will be having the dry scaly skins, which is impermeable to water, so for it do not allow the water to enter. And even whatever the kidneys what you could see in these reptiles, there the reabsorption process will be more. That is, even last year studied reabsorption, the filtration, all those, these are the different physiological process what occurs during urine formation. So for the kidneys of some of terrestrial reptiles reabsorbs most of the water, and they excrete what? A concentrated urine. They excrete what? The concentrated urine. In that way they maintain or they regulate their body temperatures. So for, I think regulators means organisms which maintains homeostasis either by physiological or what called as behavioral process, and we call that as what? Regulators. I think we have concentrated a few examples. In summer seasons, the human beings sweats to maintain the coldness of their body. In the winter seasons, the shivering takes place, which helps in muscle contraction, and that produces the heat. And even if you take the birds as well as some of the animals, they excrete the concentrated urine. To maintain the solute constant, that is to maintain the constant solute concentration in their body. And even I think to maintain the water level, the reabsorption process will be more in the birds, and that is during the physiological activities of urine formation. In that way, organisms is stable to maintain the homeostasis by different physiological as well as what? Behavioral process. I think this is regarding to that of what called as regulators. Next, we'll move on to what called as conformers. If you look on to that of the conformers, the word conformers means to make, lead, or to bring into agreement, or to adopt oneself to rule, or to pattern, or to that of a custom. So for the word conform means to make, the conform means to make alike, ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದೀವಿ ಅಂತ. To make like or to bring into agreement, to bring into what? Agreement. Or to adopt oneself, to adopt oneself to the rules or the patterns or to the costumes. Is what we call it as conformers. So for once again, the conformers or conformance means to make like, or to bring into agreement, or to adopt oneself to rule or a pattern or to that of custom. Okay. If you look on to that of many of the invertebrates as well as the lower organisms, they have the same body temperature to that of environment. Invertebrates ಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, lower organisms ಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಒಂದಷ್ಟು ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ತಗೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಫಿಶಸ್ ಏನು ಬಾಡಿ ಟೆಂಪರೇಚರ್ ಮತ್ತು ವಾಟರ್ ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ ಇಟ್ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ದ ಸೇಮ್. ಈವನ್ ದ earthworms which are buried in the soil, even their body temperature will also be equal to that of the soil what you could see. And even the insects or what called as a stick insects irbodu adu on the particular praise irbodu, even so the sun rays are falling, that body temperature gets increases according to the external environment. So far we what the term which we can use here is, that is the body temperature fluctuates. ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲೇನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಫ್ಲಕ್ಚುಯೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಆಗಲ್ಲ, ಮ್ಯಾಮಲ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಅಷ್ಟೊಂದು ಫ್ಲಕ್ಚುಯೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಆಗಲ್ಲ. ಬಟ್ ಈ ಒಂದು ಕನ್ಫರ್ಮರ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದರೆ ಬಾಡಿ ಟೆಂಪ್ರೇಚರ್ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಫ್ಲಕ್ಚುಯೇಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಟರ್ನಲ್ ಎನ್ವಿರಾನ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಹೆಂಗಿರುತ್ತೋ ಆ ರೀತಿ ಅದು ಫ್ಲಕ್ಚುಯೇಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಬಟ್ ಒಂದಷ್ಟು ಮೆಕ್ಯಾನಿಸಮ್ಸ್ ಮೇಕ್ಸ್ ದೆಮ್ ಟು ಲಿವ್ ಇನ್ ದಟ್ ಪರ್ಟಿಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ಎನ್ವಿರಾನ್ಮೆಂಟ್. ಈಗ poikilothermic animals ಅಂದರೆ they do not lose the heat either by the evaporations or by the radiation, only they lose the heat by conduction, because water is a good conductor. Water is what? Good conductor. Whatever which has been lost, it could be regained. So first, if you look on to that of poikilothermic animals, there is the water, that is the heat, is not lost either by radiations or by convections. It is lost only by means of what? Conductions. It is lost only by means of what? Conductions. And even the fish which are living in the cold Arctic areas, the fish which are living in the cold Arctic areas, they have anti-freezing substance. They have anti-freezing substance in their tissues which avoids freezing. Even so, if at all the outside environment a temperature is in a freezer level. So for the fish, some of the fishes, I'm not talking about all varieties of fishes, only the fishes which are present in this Arctic areas or in the colder areas, the tissues have a special substance. The tissues have a special substance which we call it as anti-freezing substance. Anti-freezing substance, they avoid or they prevents what? A freezing. They avoids or they prevents what? A freezing. If you talk about freshwater animals, if you talk about the freshwater animals, as you could see, they live in an area where the osmotic concentration is what called as low. So for what they do is they eliminate the water, that is they are going to eliminate the dilute urine. They eliminate the dilute urine such that to maintain a constant osmotic concentration. So for, if I could rub this, I could rub this, the fresh water animals, they eliminate excess of water, followed to that of a dilute urine to maintain the homeostasis, to that of external environment. Whereas marine animals, it might be the sharks irbodu, the rays irbodu, athwa skates irbodu, they retain a large amount, marine animals, they retain a large amount of urea, and trimethylamine oxide, which is also being denoted as TNO in their body fluids or in their blood, to maintain the higher concentration of solutes. It is to maintain a more concentrated, that is a solute concentration to that of the external environment, to maintain what called as higher solute concentration to that of external environment, and that's what we call it as conformers. Conformers means to make like, or to get into agreement, or to adopt themselves either to the external environment or what we call it as the rules irbodu, customs irbodu, adanne kariತೀವಿ custom, that is conformers anta kariತೀವಿ, adenne kariತೀವಿ conformers anta kariತೀವಿ. ಈ ಒಂದು conformers alli enagutte body that is the temperature fluctuates to that of the external environment. If not, they have some adaptations like fishes which are living in a Arctic areas, they have anti-freezing substance. Same manner, either the reptiles irbodu or freshwater fishes irbodu or freshwater organisms irbodu, they eliminate a dilute or they eliminate excess of urine to maintain a constant body, that is constant osmotic concentration to that of external environment. ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ ಈ ಮೆರೈನ್ ಅನಿಮಲ್ಸ್ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ವಾಟರ್ನ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಕ್ರೀಟ್ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ, ಇನ್ಸ್ಟೆಡ್ ಔಟ್ಸೈಡಲ್ಲಿ ಸಲ್ಯೂಟ್ ಕಾನ್ಸಂಟ್ರೇಷನ್ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಬಾಡಿ ಫ್ಲೂಯಿಡ್ಸಲ್ಲೂ ಸಲ್ಯೂಟ್ ಕಾನ್ಸಂಟ್ರೇಷನ್ನ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತೆ. ಹೆಂಗೆ ಅಂತಂದರೆ ಯೂರಿಯಾನ ತಮ್ಮ ದೇಹದಲ್ಲೇ ಇಟ್ಕೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತೆ, ಅದ್ರ ಜೊತೆ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಪರ್ಟಿಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ಕೆಮಿಕಲ್ ದಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಟ್ರೈಮಿಥೈಲ್ ಆಕ್ಸೈಡ್ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ಆ ಬಾಡಿ ಅಥವಾ ಬ್ಲಡ್ ಉಳಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತೆ, such that the solute concentration or the osmotic concentrations will be as same as to that of what? The external environment. As same as to that of what? External environment. I think this is about what? Conformance. This is about what? Conformance. And next, migrants. All of you will be knowing the terms of what called as migrators. Migrators means the animals, they move from unfavorable conditions to that of favorable conditions, either for the breeding process or for the feeding process, and we call that as what? Migrators. So for organisms which migrates from unfavorable conditions to that of favorable conditions to that of favorable conditions either for a breeding or for a feeding process, either for a breeding or the feeding process, and we call them as what? Migrators. The best example is of what? The birds. I think you have heard the term of Kealado National Park, which is present in Rajasthan. Kealado National Park, which is in Rajasthan, and even Auranganatiktu Bird Sanctuary. Bird Sanctuary, where you could see this is the area where you could see from the birds which they migrate from the Siberia. They migrate from the Siberia because of higher colder conditions. That is, as you could see, a higher, that is extremely colder, what we call it as a season, which makes them many of the birds which migrates for, that is from the place of northern, that is Siberia, to the place what called as Kealado National Park, or what called as Auranganatiktu Bird Sanctuaries. You could see that is when the favorable conditions, or when the favorable conditions returns back, finally they go back whenever the favorable conditions is not possible. I think they migrate from one place to that of the another place, is that they can migrate to a distance of 1500 kilometers. They migrate to a distance of what called as 1500 kilometers, and we call them as what? Migrators. Here the body will not fluctuate, or the body will not show any response to that. Instead, they move from one place to that of another place to get adjusted to the climatic and also to maintain the homeostasis of their body, and we call them as what? Migrators. We call them as what? Migrators. I think the remaining we will concentrate on to that of the next class. Thank you, students.